My hair feels soft. Maybe showering before episodes is a good idea. Hello, and welcome back to Movie Husbands.
Today we're going to be reviewing Mangrove, directed by Steve McQueen. It's part of a 5-part anthology movie series made by BBC One. So Mangrove is based on a true story. It follows a restaurant called the Mangrove, who's run by a man named Frank Critchlow, and he's played by Sean Parks in this film. And basically, him and 8 others, they're called the Mangrove Nine, are put on trial for inciting a riot. And this film kind of documents that journey of them being on trial. So, Jeffrey, what do you think about this movie?
I think it's really hard to talk about Mangrove without also at least mentioning this other movie that came out this year called Trial of the Chicago 7. Very similar, at least in subject matter, very different in execution. I think it may be fair to say that I think Mangrove might be 3 times as good, or maybe twice as good. And for a lot of reasons. The Trial of the Chicago 7 is a film by Netflix made by Aaron Sorkin that has all of these kind of, I don't want to say big budget, but definitely more Hollywood-friendly sort of archetypes. There's a lot of, swelling of violins and people tearing up and giving grand speeches and that kind of stuff. And Mangrove is just quite a bit more subdued and so much more emotional because of its restraint.
Yeah, I thought this film was able to really accomplish that without feeling the need to be showy. You didn't have these gigantic sets. You didn't have all these extras kind of littering the back of a scene. You had specific characters and moments, very intimate and very personal moments.
The fact that Mangrove has characters that feel like they're living, breathing human beings is so kind of diametrically opposed to the way that Trial of Chicago 7 treats characters, which is more like political archetypes. And I like that movie too. I'm pretty far from loving it, but all the characters in that film kind of are these archetypes of just, saying the right things at the right time. Aaron Sorkin really likes to overwrite things. And Steve McQueen seems much more into authenticity, or how this would have actually looked if people were speaking on the fly. The acting is so strong, to start with that little caveat, but people wear their entire lives on their faces. Like, just the way that somebody looks in this film tells you everything about them. Whereas in a film like Trial of Chicago 7, they're going to stand up and somehow tell you their whole life story while they're screaming in the courtroom. And I have so much more respect for acting like that's in Mangrove, because it's so difficult to pull off. And I'm not going to say that anybody could give a really great, grandiose speech. Not everybody can do that. But there is just a tremendous amount of subtlety, and there is so much put on the actors in this film to convey emotions to you. And it's so difficult.
Yeah, there's so much weight in the subtlety too. There's a specific scene with a colander, which I won't, describe the context of that scene. But there's this scene with this colander, and what happens is so subtle, and it kind of just lingers. And I've never felt so emotional seeing a colander.
Steve McQueen is really good at that. And because I remember that in 12 Years a Slave, too. He has these little mundane moments that are happening at extraordinary moments in history. Like, he doesn't want you to forget how real these things are and how all of these people had these little tiny mundane details in their lives just like we do.
And also, I think, on kind of a bigger picture from that, it's so nice to see a film that describes a piece of history that a lot of people might not be aware of, because all these little pieces have a place in a movement, and all of them matter.
Yeah, I think we should talk for a moment about the craftsmanship in this film. The way this film is shot is perfect. And it's not perfect in the way that I'm sometimes guilty of this, that I love, Paul Thomas Anderson, like swinging his camera around and showing how great of a director he is. Steve McQueen is not showing off at all. He's doing exactly what he needs to evoke emotion from you. And it's so subtle. And there are moments where he just will quietly sort of zoom in on a character, and it's maybe a 3-minute shot, just on this one character, and it tells you everything that you need to know about the scene. And you can't even see what's surrounding them. It's really extraordinary.
So what's interesting is that a lot of this has to do with the film choices and what equipment that you decide to use when filming. I don't want to get too much into the comparisons with Trial of Chicago 7, but this is actually a really fundamental difference in the way this movie was shot in comparison to that movie. So the Trial of Chicago 7 was filmed with anamorphic lenses, and Mangrove was filmed with spheric lenses. And an anamorphic lens leads to a bigger aspect ratio, which is basically a bigger picture. And a spheric lens leads to a smaller aspect ratio, therefore a smaller picture. Usually the lenses are also faster, so they let in more light, which allows you to control your depth of field more. And so what that has an effect on is there's a lot of these shots in Mangrove where the background is more blurred out, and it really centers on a character's expressions in their face. And in turn with Trial of Chicago 7, you have all these big wide angles, you have a lot of things happening in a frame, and I think that's because they were definitely making it like an ensemble piece. You have a lot of these big name actors in it, so you could kind of fit all of them in the frame. And Mangrove is definitely much of a character-driven film. There's these moments where each character kind of has this singular kind of like monologue that will happen with them that's very impactful and very emotional. I remember one scene with Letitia Wright, and she kind of goes on this monologue about what this means to her, and this fight, and how much it means to not just her but her future children. And she understands that it's not just about her. And this is just such a beautiful monologue. There's also a moment where Frank Critchlow, played by Sean Parks, is during the trial, he's kind of things kind of happen, and he's kind of put away into kind of like a holding cell from a moment in time. And this scene is one of the most fantastic scenes of this movie, in my opinion. It's so emotional because he's just kind of left by himself, and the light is streaming in behind him, and I just can't. I don't want to give it away, but it was just so fantastic.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting for maybe some of our viewers and our friends that aren't as engaged with film as we are on a daily basis to watch Trial of Chicago 7 and watch Mangrove and really see what you prefer. Because Trial of Chicago 7 is decent and has a lot of big name actors and probably a fairly large production budget to do everything they did. And there's a lot of showboating. You're not going to miss anything that film is trying to do. And Mangrove, I don't know what it was produced for, but I can't imagine it was very much. The actors aren't as well known, and it's doing so much more with so much less.
Because I feel like you build like this kind of emotional identity about this restaurant, which how can somebody pull that off in a movie?
Yeah.
To build so much emotional identity about a location, and the people that it kind of creates a home for.
I will say too, this movie races. Like when it was over, I don't want to say I was surprised, but it's a 2 hour and 10-minute movie, and it's one of those where you don't look at your watch a single time.
I was so entranced by this movie. I had no concept of time. I loved every single moment. There's not one thing I would have cut from this film. I can't really explain too much about how the movie ends, but there's basically a shot where the verdict is coming in. The jury's kind of made their verdict of whether the 9 are guilty or not of inciting this riot. And so the verdicts are coming out, and they're kind of reading them. And there's this shot that's just so beautiful. I cried. It was so overwhelmingly emotional, and it was so simple. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't showboaty. It was just beautiful.
Yeah, I will always respect a director that puts emotion before, technical theatrics. All right, so I think we're ready to go to our grades. You want to go first?
Yeah, I'm totally ready. I give this movie an A. I absolutely adored this film. I think just harkening back to what we've already mentioned, this movie wasn't showboaty. It was very raw and intimate and personal, and I just loved every second of it.
Yeah, same. I'm also at an A. Which is a grade I feel like I don't really give out a lot, but this movie was really powerful and impactful, and I think most importantly, I can't think of anything I would do differently. Okay, so that's it for our review of Mangrove.
If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a like, and if you're not subscribed already, feel free to check that subscribe box for our latest review videos, and we'll see you on the next one.